What's going on, everybody? My name is Curci, and Prey. So Prey was a game that I was really looking forward to because Bethesda's name was attached to it, and lately when it comes to Bethesda games that I've been playing in the past few years, they've been knocking it out of the park. Skyrim, Dishonored, Wolfenstein The New Order, The Evil Within, Fallout 4, Doom, they've been killing it. Games that I have been really thoroughly enjoying. There are varying levels of enjoyment there, obviously. I mean, Fallout 4 is amazing, Doom is amazing, The Evil Within was pretty good, and Dishonored 1 I think is slightly overrated. Not saying it's not good, just saying it's overrated. I also have never played the Elder Scrolls Online and Dishonored 2. I heard mixed reviews about the Elder Scrolls Online, but it's an MMO, so it gets a pass, or at least I'm gonna give it one. And I heard great things about Dishonored 2, and it's a game that I probably will go back to after E3. We'll see what happens after E3. And if I'm forgetting about another game that Bethesda has come out with over the past few years that I probably should bring up here, then I'm sorry, but those are the games that come to mind when I think Bethesda in the last few releases. So anyway, Prey. Prey was a game that I actually wasn't a huge fan of it when I started it. Seeing all the new mechanics and all these little features that this game has, sometimes it's a little intimidating when you hit the start menu and you're seeing all of the little menus. You have chip sets and suit sets, and then there's perks and neuromods, and it's just overwhelming you when you see it. It makes you think, oh god, I have to learn about all of this. It's not exclusive to Prey. Mass Effect Andromeda, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, even a little bit of Mad Max did it. These are games that have a lot going into it, and you're going to have to get eased into it. In like the first few times you play this game, you're probably not going to like it, but when you get a grasp for the controls, then the game starts to click, which is exactly what happened with Prey. See, the game does a good job of easing you into these newer mechanics and all these different features and how to play the game, and I think it does it really well. It might drag its ass a little bit with certain things, like I was collecting shotgun ammo way before I actually got a shotgun. I remember thinking like, okay, well eventually I'm going to have to come up with a shotgun, so where is this shotgun? And eventually I found it, but then it was another thing where I was getting Q-beam cells. I'm like, what the hell are these? A Q-beam is a weapon that you can totally miss in the game. I didn't think about it until I started driving over here, and I was like, wait, is the Q-beam something that you can, like, there was no story mission that led me directly to a Q-beam. I did a side quest that led me to it. Now, there are other places where you can get a Q-beam, but ultimately, unless you did those extra things or you went off the beaten path, probably weren't going to find it. Which is another great thing that I think this game does. See, this game did a good job of distracting me. In all other walks of life, it's probably a negative thing to say, where like, if you're at work and you're like, I get easily distracted, that's probably a bad thing to say. Or if you're in school trying to pay attention and you say, I get easily distracted, it's probably a bad thing. But when it comes to video games in the video game world, where you're trying to do the main quest, but you're getting easily distracted by all the little things here and there that you can do, that is a good thing. It means that you have an interest to do the other things. Games like Skyrim and Fallout 4 and a lot of other games that go off the beaten path and give you all these little side missions. There are a lot of Assassin's Creed games that don't do it well, where they're like, oh, look at these extra things, and you're like, I just don't care. But Prey does a good job of making you want to do those things. Okay, you're trying to save this person or you're trying to do this thing. It's intriguing because of the narrative that surrounds this station that you're on. I guess I should segue from that into the story of the game. So you play as Morgan Yu. Could be a dude or a girl. I don't actually know if the girl is named Morgan. I just know that I played the dude and the dude was referred to as Morgan. So Morgan, he's on this space station that is orbiting the moon, and it turns out there is this hostile alien race that is killing everybody, and you have to navigate this station. It almost has shades of Dead Space in it, where there is this hostile alien race that is killing everybody. You're not sure what this alien is, why it's there. You just know that you are on the receiving end of their hostilities, and you have to find a way to navigate this station, maybe even trying to find other survivors. See, this is where the side stuff comes into play, because some side missions are like, try to find this person, or try to find this person, or maybe do this, or maybe do that, and it's all interesting because it's all in an effort of surviving. See, I wasn't really sure what this game was trying to be when all the trailers started coming out. I actually avoided a lot of the trailers aside from the one E3 trailer that we saw, what was it, last year or the year before? The one that announced that Prey was a thing that was coming out. I wasn't so sure if this was trying to be a horror game or if it was going to be an action game. The game has a lot of horror elements early on where there's a lot of mystery, enemies are jumping out at you, there's a lot of like flickering lights and dark hallways. I almost don't want to talk too much about the story. It's not like some mind-blowing story. The ending's pretty sweet. By the way, stick until after the end credits are done. I feel the need to say that because when I beat the game and the end credits came up, I was like, I almost wanted to stop the game because the game ended and I was like, I wasn't really thrilled with the ending. I was like, that was actually kind of lame. I'm not really a huge fan of that. And then there was a post-credit scene and I was like, there it is. That's the ending I was looking for. So if you play this game, wait until after the credits are done. But there is this mystery. You're just trying to navigate through the area. You're not really sure what your enemy is. So every enemy that you encounter is terrifying. But as you progress and as you start to experience a lot of these different enemies and you start to unlock different weapons and different abilities, then they start to to diffuse a little bit of the tension because you're able to handle yourself a lot better. There is a sense of progression where you're starting to feel like you are becoming stronger, you are becoming better. It's a good character progression system. There are these things called neuromods you could find on the station, and you use those to spend for perks, and there are two different types of perks. There are human perks, and then there are alien perks. By the way, the aliens are referred to as Typhon, so there are Typhon abilities. And they're like powers. You can use telekinesis, you can use like a psychic shock and damage your enemies, you can raise the dead and have one of them fight for you. Then there are human abilities. You can repair things, you can hack into computers, you can unlock additional modification slots for your suit or your psi scope. Is that what it's called? The psi scope? I forget. I think it's the psi scope. It's basically this giant cyclops looking thing that you put on your head and you can use it to scan enemies. By scanning enemies, you start to accumulate data, and eventually when you scan a certain amount of a certain enemy, then it unlocks additional abilities for the Typhon abilities. But depending on how you spec your character dictates how you play the game, and there are multiple ways of how you play this game. You can go into a situation guns blazing, or you could be stealthy. There is a stealth element to this game, and it's not one of those things where it's like, yeah, there is stealth in this game, but not really. No, there's actually legitimately stealth. In fact, there were times where I would fight against an enemy, die, fight against the enemy, die, fight against the enemy, die, and then there was a certain point you have to sit there and say, this isn't working, so I gotta do something different. Let me try sneaking past them. But I like the way that not only is there different ways of going about a situation, but there are different ways of going about certain enemies. There are certain enemies that will take the shape of objects, and when you go into a room, there's a bit of uncertainty. This is where the horror element comes in, because you're not really sure what item is an enemy and what isn't. There are a lot of times where they will do a little bit of a jump scare, and it's a little unexpected sometimes, where you'll walk into a room. Oh, God! Got the heart pumping just a couple of beats faster, but I like that there were little horror elements that maintain the experience. Then there are other enemies that might have some elemental abilities. Some of them might have fire abilities, some of them might have electric abilities. Then you have these ones that have psychic abilities, and there are a lot of different ways of going about certain enemies and a lot of different tools that are at your disposal, and different enemies require different strategies, and I've always loved that about games. See, there's one weapon that you get early on, it's called the glue gun. For whatever reason, I really struggle with that name. I don't know why.
Or glue. Glue, 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 glue. Glue.
But you can use that to kind of freeze your enemy if you shoot at them, and then they're kind of just like stuck a little bit, and then it'll give you bonus damage because an immobilized enemy will take extra damage. But then there are some enemies that you can just melee, like the little mimics that pop up. I just started meleeing them, and then eventually I started just blasting them with my psychic abilities, where it's just like a one-hit kill, where I'm like, all right, dead. Again, it all depends on how you spec your character. There's an ability that I got later on that allows me to sort of blink from one area to another. It doesn't blink me very far. It blinks me like a couple of extra feet, and then in my place, there is this sort of shadowy copy of myself that enemies will engage. So whenever there were like a lot of enemies, I'll go, just blink, and then just start sprinting somewhere where an enemy wouldn't be able to see me. And if they did see me, I would blink again. It was an ability that I got later on and almost wish that I had earlier, because it just really changed up how I went about an area. But then there's this one enemy that will pursue you. This giant enemy that just randomly spawns and will pursue you. And there was a time where like I saw it, I got freaked out, I ran all the way to an escape pod, locked myself inside the escape pod, and waited for the enemy to go away. You can kill it later on in the game when you become a lot stronger and you get better weapons and better abilities, then yeah, you can take it on. The one time that I actually killed it myself was I would put down turrets into this hallway that it couldn't go down, and then I would run out of the hallway and just blast and then run back out and shoot it again and use my psychic abilities as well. Like there were a lot of different ways of going about that situation. Sometimes it just pops in front of, like it doesn't literally spawn in front of you, but you'll turn a corner and it'll be there and you're not expecting it, so it just shifts your strategy. You could be stealthing throughout an area and then all of a sudden, hello. But again, this whole idea of survival, there is a strong survival element to this game where you gather little resources. You can actually break resources down into like the molecular level and use those to kind of craft things. There's a crafting station, so if you have the correct amount of materials, you can craft a med kit, ammo, different weapons, different little things here and there like neuromods. And the survival element comes in because there was a point where I was almost like, I guess the word is stranded in this area of the game that I think I just ventured into because I wanted to explore everything. So I'm just like kind of hiding and waiting for the patrols to have an opening so that I can escape. And a lot of times it just resorts to me just running through an area until I can find a way to get out. There's so many great things about this game that I want to talk about it all. And every time I talk about one thing, I want to bring something else up. up. I feel like I'm jumping around all over the place with this review, but in reality, the game is just that. You are just jumping all over the place, where you have this one little objective and you're trying to do this thing, and then the enemy comes, like the giant behemoth thing. By the way, the behemoth thing is called a nightmare. So the giant nightmare shows up and it sends you over a different area, and then you're out of ammo, so you have to go back to the main area of the game, which is the lobby, which has like a safe area, and then there's a crafting place and a place where you can break down materials. So it's always a good place to go to just to kind of refresh yourself with different resources. I say it's a safe area, but even then, it's not 100% safe. Eventually in the game, there are these allies that you can save, and they will actually return to your safe area, and sometimes when you go back, they'll give you a bonus objective or like some sort of little side quest for you. Other times you'll go back and they're like, hey, we found some food and some ammo if you want it. But there was one time where I was like, this is my safe area. This is my little bubble. Nobody can hurt me if I'm inside the bubble. But turns out the nightmare spawned, ran inside of that area, killed my friends, and then I had to like go through this back area, and I'm like, oh God, what happened? I just really enjoy a lot of the little things that this game has. There are these little things to appreciate. And one of the things that really started changing for me in this game was when you had the ability to start saving other survivors, because then all of a sudden, like, yeah, the game was giving me an objective and a priority to do, but I was almost creating my own little priority where I was like, yeah, I know I got to do this thing, but I really want to save these people over here, and I don't want to move on until these people are safe. My priority was that I wanted to save as many people as I could before completing the story. But it was just a really good game. Again, you're getting easily distracted by all the little things here and there. There's a lot of backtracking in this game, a lot of retracing your steps, which brings up one of actually the biggest problem that I have with this game, which are loading screens. Loading screens galore! It really sucks. There's actually a loading screen, goes into another loading screen, then it gives you an A prompt that allows you to go into an area. But because there's a lot of retracing of your steps, it gets annoying because, let's just say, for example, that you're on the exterior of the station, which the game actually has a pretty neat zero gravity element. Like, you control your tilt, you control how fast you're going, and it's almost a little disorienting, especially in one area of the game. You're trying to follow a map, but the map is like really not helpful. The game does a good job of like when you're thrusting, it's momentum focused. It's not like you're thrusting and then when you stop, you slow down. It's like, no, you're gonna keep going until you actually break. So there are a lot of times where I'm like, all right, I gotta get over there. Nope, went too far. Anyway, there are times where you're in the exterior of the station and then you gotta get back to the lobby. And the fastest way to get back to the lobby is to go through the hardware labs. So going from the exterior to the airlock that connects to the hardware labs, that's one loading screen. Then you gotta go through the hardware labs to the lobby. That's another loading screen. And you're probably spending a total amount of like maybe a minute in the hardware labs while you're trying to go from point A to point B, especially if you've recently cleared it down and there are no enemies. Enemies do respawn after a while. They affect different enemies. It's not the same enemy. So like if you go through the hardware labs, there might be a thermal phantom at one point, and in other points there might actually be a weaver. Loading screens were just really unnecessarily long. I feel like a lot of the time that I spent in this game were spent just watching loading screens. Now luckily the loading screen to reload after you die is not terrible. It's like, all right, we're good. But as far as like an actual loading screen, I think I timed it. It was like almost 2 minutes. It's like, that's too long for a single loading screen, especially if you're going from one area to another and there's an entire area in between and you're going through 2 different loading screens in order to get from that point. And it's just, ugh. But that's like the one big negative of the game. Everything else from story to mechanics, they're all really good. I just love the little things in this game, the little stories that you can partake in. And one thing that I didn't expect are little choices that you can make. The game doesn't present them as choices, but they're like definitely separate outcomes to different things. And the more you explore in this game, the more side quests you do, the more you look at terminals and read emails and gather information, the better of an experience you're going to have. And I highly recommend that if you are going to play Prey, take your time. Don't just go through the main story. You're doing yourself a disservice. Just go and explore all the different little things here and there. Do some side objectives. Make a connection with certain characters. There's one character in the game that I got introduced to and I'm like, I don't really care about you at all. And then later in the game, I'm like, I actually care about you a lot. Please don't die. My point is that Prey is a phenomenal experience. I definitely think it's one of the better games this year. I think it's definitely number 2. I'm not sure if it's better than Mass Effect Andromeda yet. I know a lot of people are unhappy with Mass Effect Andromeda for some stupid reason, but I actually really like Mass Effect Andromeda. It's my number 1 of the year so far. Prey, very close number 2. Not really sure if it's overtaking 1 yet. I don't even think I really need to say it, but yeah, I highly recommend anybody play Prey. It's a great game that appeals to a lot of different play styles. If you like slower, stealthier games, this game has it. If you like action-oriented, this game has it. If you like survival, has it. Like little horror elements, has it. A great story, it's there. Little things to do in the game. You want to distract yourself. You just want to get lost in this world. Guys, Prey. Prey is for you and everybody. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.